Alright everyone, I'm going to cut right to the chase at the start and show you my end result so you know if you want to watch the video or not. Now, I'm in my basement where I typically get very poor cell signal, and I am testing two different boosters, really a new booster that I'm comparing to my one that I've had in the past. And so if I look at my data here, my summary, basically in green is without any booster. I was getting about 5 megabits per second download and 0.1 megabits per second upload, which if you guessed right, that means it really does not work hardly at all in my basement. And the ping was through the roof. It was like 400 something milliseconds there on this test. And then if I switch to a high boost, which I've had in my basement for a while, and if I was close to it in the light blue, I was getting 57 megabits per second down and about 7.5 up, and the ping was cut in half to about 175 milliseconds. But if I got far away from it, so 5 feet was being right underneath it, 40 feet away in the corner of my house in the basement, I was getting only 6 megabits per second down and essentially nothing for up. So again, it would not work. So I was basically in a far corner of my house. I was back to square one where I had no signal. But now if I try this new Cel-Fi Go X booster, that one I got 42 megabits per second download right close to the booster. But if you look at the 40 feet away one, the darker orange, that one still got 36.5 megabits per second download. Now the upload did drop more, but you can see that the upload for the Cel-Fi was 18 when I was close to it, and it dropped down to 2 megabits per second when I was far away. And then the ping you can see is way better for both of them. It's in the 30s or 40s milliseconds. So that is the end result. And if you want to know more about how you get this thing set up, what makes it special, why is it so different, keep watching and let's go through it.
Alright, hey everyone, this is Nate and this is the Nader Tater channel. Now, I did a specific video talking about the features and the pros and cons of this Cel-Fi Go booster, and there's a separate video that will go into all those details. All I'll mention as far as why it's different here is that it's a narrowband booster. Narrowband booster means that it is carrier specific. Now, it can do all the major carriers in the US, but you can only do one at a time, and by focusing on one at a time, the FCC allows them to actually have more gain or more power. So this is the only carrier-specific booster in the U.S., and it is 100 dB of gain, which is a big improvement in the repeating of the signal in your house. So when it detects the signal up at the antenna that they provide outside is the assumption, then when it repeats it on the inside, the stronger the outside signal is, the stronger the coverage in the house. So if you have very poor signal, like 1 bar or half a bar outside, a broadband booster, which I actually have in the basement right now, is not able to give you coverage inside the house for very big distance. And one example I covered in the other video, it's about 300 square feet of coverage in the house, which means you have to be about 10 feet away from the booster. Now with this one, in the same scenario, it would be 16 times greater coverage, and so it's like 5,000 square feet that it would cover. So it's a big difference, and that's at least what it says on paper, right? So that's what all this information has told me based on the research. So now I want to test it. So let me show you real fast what's in the box that you get from Waveform. You will see that this is a pricey kit. It's about double the price of a broadband one that I've had in my house now here for a couple years, and I use it because I'm in the basement and I have very poor coverage down here, or oftentimes no coverage if I don't have a booster. Now upstairs I have okay coverage, but because the basement, the ground level, all that kind of stuff, it blocks the signal. So we will test this out here and see how big of a difference it can make. Alright, so here's all the stuff laid out. This is the main unit, and this is what has all the expensive electronics in it. I know they actually had to spend millions of dollars to actually tool up and create the high precision electronics that are inside here to do the narrowband. That's why it's so expensive, is because it takes a much higher level of electronics to actually be narrowband versus a broadband booster. So this is the main booster unit that is what's doing all the work, and then the rest of the stuff is really antennas and then mounting for it. So this is the Cel-Fi Go X unit, and then the other one that you probably recognize is this big antenna, this log periodic directional antenna, and this is what goes outside. And this one you can see here is a 600 megahertz to 6,000 megahertz antenna, which is important because the T-Mobile signal goes down to the 600 megahertz range. Now that is on their N71 band, which is their 5G NR, which this booster actually does not support. That's the only 5G type that's not supported. It does support the 5G DSS, which is common with some of the other carriers, AT&T and Verizon. But that's another FCC limitation actually as far as what bands can be boosted. So I think it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, and 13 I think are the bands that are allowed to be boosted for any booster out there. So this guy gets mounted outside. It has a L bracket with a clamp that then goes onto this J mount right here. Now this J mount is included with the kit as well. All the stuff's included in the kit. And this can obviously be mounted to a wall, to a roof. I'm actually going to mount mine to a TV antenna mast that I already have, so I don't need this guy because I already have a pole out there. So I'm going to mount my log periodic directional antenna directly to the mount, and then the app will help me aim it. Alright, and then so you need to get the cabling down from obviously that antenna down to the unit. So they include, this is 3 different cables here. They're all 30 feet. And they are RS400, which is a higher quality. You see it's a thicker cable than like my other booster that has a cheaper cable on it. So there's 3 30-foot cables, and that's because you need one from that antenna to this booster, and then from this booster out you need to get to your repeaters inside the house. Now the way this kit is set up is you have 2 different types of indoor antennas, and that is this panel antenna or this dome antenna, and they're really for 2 different uses. You know, this dome antenna makes a lot of sense to have on like a drop ceiling here in the basement, and I put it right in the middle of the house, and then obviously it's going to do a you know, a spherical coverage area around it, and that is probably what I would use here in this basement. But if I had a place where this antenna is going to be on one side of the building and you need coverage kind of more directional, if that's the case, then you might want to use the panel antenna, and that one obviously projects it in more of a directional path this way. And this one comes with mounts for that one as well. It's really designed to be mounted on a wall, and then it has a little slip that it slides into, so you basically just, you know, slide it onto that mount on the wall, and that's what that one's designed for. Now you can mix and match these, so you can have one panel and one dome if you wanted to, and the way that you hook that up to this guy is this has SMA connectors, so they're smaller, not the N-type connectors that the big cables have. So they give you little adapters for those as well, and those are right here. So this little adapter goes from SMA to the N-type connector on here, and then from that you would go to this distribution block, and this splits that indoor antenna into 2 units, and then you can run your 30-foot cables to each of these. So that's how this is designed to be set up. It's the GoX to a adapter to the splitter, and then you have 1 cable to each of your indoor antennas. So you only use half of your indoors. They give you 4, but you only use 2, and that's something that you might even want to mess with, because depending on your situation, you might not quite know which one's the best. And I think these are affordable enough that it makes sense for them just to include them in the kit, and you can mess around with them and see what works the best for you. Now what else they have in here? They have some other cables, some adapter cables that might be needed for setup, and then they also have here, this is a lightning arrestor. So this is basically like a, think of it like a fuse that goes in line from the connection from the outdoor antenna down to inside to help protect this expensive part if you were to have a lightning strike, to keep that surge in power from hurting those electronics. So that's all included in the kit. And then also very important, and this is where, so Waveform doesn't make this. This is Cel-Fi Go, so I think you can buy it from other places. But this kit is what Waveform puts all together with all these components that they know, they've tested, they know they work well. But you can certainly buy the Cel-Fi Go unit itself separately, and you can buy all this other stuff separately. But this is all a kind of a branded kit that Waveform tries to sell. And then these instructions and their support is all provided by Waveform. So that is something that you do get with the Waveform setup, is they do a lot of this testing in-house, and they make sure things work the way they're supposed to. And then this instruction manual is very detailed and goes through all the steps for what to do. They teach you about cell signals. A lot of that I touch on as well in this video or in past videos, but they tell you how to best set it up to work, and then they go through the app and how to actually best place this unit so that you get the different coverage that you need. So that's really helpful, and now that's what I need to do, is basically set this up myself. So I'm going to go install it. I will compare it to no booster down here in the basement, as well as the high boost broadband booster that I already have set up, and then we'll use this one and really show you how big of a difference can it make for you, because obviously it's a lot of money. And it is a little bit tricky though with cellular, because it is very much your mileage may vary, and that's based off what type of signal that you get at your house and what exact situation you're trying to leverage it in. Alright, so before I get to the fun stuff, it says first power up the Cel-Fi unit inside without antennas hooked up, and download the app on your phone, or in my case my tablet here. And that's the Wave app, so that's the Cel-Fi Wave app. And for me, with this Android tablet, I'm downloading it through the Google Play Store. Now they do give you like a phone number you can text to download it, but I just searched for Wave app, and it actually showed up for me. So now I'm going to open up this app. Now it is powered up. At first I didn't even see a light that was on this to know that it's actually powered up, but after looking at it, there is a little blinking LED that is right there. It is pretty inconspicuous though, so that's how I know that at least my my unit is powered up here. So let me go through this app and actually see what it does here for the initial setup. Alright, so it looks like it found the unit. I didn't do anything other than open the app up and allow permissions for it to search for nearby devices. So it says be within 4 feet, so it does use Bluetooth for this setup part. So I'm letting it do its thing, is obviously syncing, gathering data and whatnot. And then I can go through here, and now you can see that it comes set up with Verizon, which is my personal cell phone coverage. Now I have both Verizon and T-Mobile for home internet that I use, and I'm curious how their speeds compare with this unit boosting it versus them being up kind of on the same level on the 3rd floor of the house. So obviously I get zero signal and everything because nothing's hooked up here, but this allows me to be connected to it, and now I can use this app to greatly help me aim my antenna outside. It does tell you there's some unique things about this booster, and that's that it actively searches for signals. So anytime you hook up antennas to this and rearrange them, you want to restart the device so it can go through there and research for the best signal to grab hold of. And I think it only boosts 2 bands even within the same carrier at any given time. So you want to figure out which bands are the best for you. So there's a little bit of setup with this one versus a broadband. The broadband one just says click it on, crank up the boost, and it's just sending out all the signals and boosting all of them. There are a lot of problems with that. Specifically, if you are on a carrier that has a weaker signal than other carriers around you, that broadband one will actually saturate the signal with the strong carrier. So if AT&T was very strong in your house, but you have Verizon, for example, you would not benefit as much from that broadband booster as you could a narrowband, because a narrowband you can say just listen for my Verizon signal and boost just that Verizon. So that's one of the differences here. So obviously this shows you that it's scanning, it's not going to get any signal down here, but if it were actually connected, then this is where you can look here and see what your outdoor signal strength is, as well as what bands it's connected to. So that's where you would want to watch this data here when you're setting up the outdoor antenna. So that's what I'll be doing now. Let me go get that antenna put up outside, and then I can start messing with this. Alright, so now I have it installed up on my antenna mast, which is actually outside this window, and it actually is a 30-foot high mast. So my cable that came with it is a 30-foot cable,
which means it doesn't actually reach inside. It's just outside this window. So I had to connect another 30 foot. So I actually have 60 feet of cabling from my antenna up at the top down to the Cel-Fi Go unit right here. Now, waveform really tells you in this instructional booklet, which is very good, it does walk you through everything, that you might want to test outside first with a short 5-foot cable lead that they provide in the kit as well. And don't have the internal antenna hooked up, just have the short 5-foot cable and your power, and go out the yard, go to all different sides of your house to actually test it. Now, I've done that in the past many times for my own home internet and other antennas and boosters, so I already have a pretty good idea where I need to go. And in fact, I just took the old antenna off. It's a kind of a universal L bracket that these live periodic directional antennas use. So I just took my old one off and actually put the new one on, and then I check the quality to make sure it's good. My two main towers I use are 1 mile away as the crow flies, and there's both T-Mobile and Verizon. I think one's AT&T as well, but T-Mobile and Verizon are the two ones I use here at my house. So those are actually on different towers, but they're probably about 1,000 foot apart. And with being a mile, it's what, like, a little over 5,000 feet. So it's about the same direction. It's not quite the same, but I basically split the hairs. Now, with this unit, again, you have to tell it which carrier you want to use. It comes out of the box set for Verizon. Alright, so when you first plug it up, it actually has a little LED right here that turns red, and then it'll turn to a flashing green light. That means it's booting up, and it actually does a search for the best band out there for that carrier. So you do want to have this outdoor antenna hooked up prior to powering it on, so it can do that search. It does take a few minutes to go through and do the optimization. What you'll see when you are in there is it will be I'll go to the advanced tab, and it'll show you under radio A, radio B, instead of saying boosting, it'll say searching or scanning, and then it'll be optimizing. So you can see here I have 100% antenna separation, which is very good. That's something you want above 80%, and it's because I'm so far away. So I have that outdoor antenna up there, and then down here 30 feet lower, and then over there another 20 feet or so I have the indoor repeater, or the indoor antenna, and so that's good separation. I have the whole house between those two. Signal strength is how good of a strength I have connected to the cell tower, and signal quality is how much interference, what's my signal to noise ratio there. So these are good values, especially band 2. B2 is 80% signal strength, 75% quality. That's pretty good. I'm a little bit weaker on my band 4, but those are good numbers. Now you can also do drop down the super channels and get even more information as far as like what the bandwidth is, what my donor RSRP and RQ and signal to noise are. And you can see here you want a better than -115. So you can see on this one specifically, band 4, I have -100. So that's not a great signal, but it's reasonable, and it's certainly good enough for boosting, especially with a signal to noise of 9, so it's not bad. So we can go down here, you can see the gain of it. So I have a downlink system gain of 77 dB, and you can see the uplink safe mode gain of 88. And then if we drop down the band B2, this one you can see I have a better signal outdoor. My donor one is a -94 dBm, and I still have about the same signal to noise, about 9. So again, reasonable signals. It's not fantastic signals, but it's certainly worthy of boosting. If it was about a -115, that's about, you get close to the limit of where you can be for boosting the signal. So you can see again, this one has this 70 to 80s gain in there, and again this one can do a max of 100, but there's lots of limitations as far as how can you get exactly there. But if you had a weaker signal, then you could probably even boost it more and get into the 90s, I think. So what are some other things in here? We have device state. It just tells you if it's on the shutdown state. In my software, you can get more details about these
This is just basically a consolidated, but it does give you the PCI number. That PCI number can help you track down exactly what tower you're connected to. And then let's see what this PLM IDs. And then scroll back up here to the top. Let's go over here to the settings. This one you can see, this is how you can change your operator. So if you don't want it to be Verizon, you can just go in here and drop this down and change it to T-Mobile. And then again, it'll do that searching criteria. Take a few minutes for it to switch. I'm going to leave it on Verizon. My booster name I can change, obviously. Software version says I'm up to date. Antenna settings. So this is where you can do a position test. So you can go in here, and this is just a nice way for it to log and keep track of your signal metrics. So I'm just pretending this is on position 1 and telling it to check. What it's going to go through is scan the different bands and then determine what type of signal strength and quality there is. And so the idea is that you would do this in multiple different orientations at each location, and then you would basically compare which ones get you the best signal or speed. Okay, so there you go. You can see this one shows a LTE of 117.519. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Now the other way is actually to use an app. I'll show that in just a second, but let me get through here on some of these other settings. So here you can also see the band selection. So since I'm on Verizon, it's only going to show me Verizon bands. If I switch to T-Mobile, it'll show me a couple other bands as well, or 3G signals, which I guess those are all kind of dead now. But anyways, these are ones you can uncheck. So if you uncheck band B2 and uncheck band B4, then it will force it onto band 5 and 13. And then that does allow your phone or device to do carrier aggregation. You can also unselect all but one, and that will force the booster to only boost that one band, and you can see how well your device or phone performs there. And I did that, so we'll show that in just a second. Lastly is the channel settings. So here obviously you can, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you can turn off specific channels within a band and prevent them from getting on there altogether. So then back here on the main dashboard page, this is just showing you overall Verizon, my coverage type, 4G LTE, and then overall what my best antenna separation, signal strength, and signal quality is. So now what I did in here is I actually tested my phone, which is Verizon, and then I tested, and so that was a phone, obviously Wi-Fi is off, and I'm connected just to this booster. And then I tested the T-Mobile Arcadian gateway with no booster, with the broadband booster, and then with this narrowband booster. And I did the same thing for my phone, and I did a couple different locations. One is right by the indoor antenna, and the other one is in the corner of the basement down here where I get zero signal without a booster. So the phones will not connect to data, the phones won't text, any of that kind of stuff. It has like a minus 121 dBm, give or take, so my phone normally will not connect down there. So I'm going to compare all that testing with this device. So I only have one cable left to run for the indoor antenna. I don't actually have the ability to do the split, at least right this second. So I'm running just a single dome overhead that I have up in my drop ceiling just as a temporary placement to see. And so that's basically right by the other broadband unit that I have. It's unplugged right now and unconnected. But this should give a fairly fair assessment. That's about in the middle of my basement, and the basement footprint is about 2,500 square feet. So, you know, I'm really curious to see how that performance compares to this one versus the other one with the exact same outdoor placement, same outdoor situation. Alright, so since my tablet is not cellular based, it doesn't have a modem in there, I had to go to my cell phone to actually do this direct connection to the booster so I could do this testing. So for the testing, I use Waveform's Signal Stream app, which tells you both your cell signal metric as well as your speed. Now, take the speed with a grain of salt, because the speed on the that stream app is actually always a lot slower for me for whatever reason. I don't know what server it actually uses. I didn't look into that, but I'm using it as a relative measure, so just make note of that. So I also use speedtest.net app just to kind of check and see how it compares to what I'm more used to running from a speed test measurement tool. Alright, so just to give you some spatial awareness, that's the window. The booster for indoor comes out right here. And then if we go over into this bedroom, this is where I'm doing my far away testing. Right here. So that is the setup.
Alright, so I've done lots of testing here and tried to make sure I have a good consensus. Cellular data is always a bit tricky to get test results back to back because they can vary a lot. So I try to do all this stuff all at the same time. If you have watched my channel, you might see other speeds at other times, but this is what I got down here at this time. So just note that speeds can change, and these are not fantastic, especially not my pings right now, but it is what it is. And so I did an A to B for a lot of these different devices. Now, speaking of devices, on the far left is called device, or is the column, but Android means I'm using my Android cell phone and I'm using the speedtest.net app on that phone to actually get these results. And that's why you don't see an RSRP or a signal to noise ratio, because those are not reported through that speedtest.net app. Now in blue it says signal stream, and that is the signal stream app that Waveform has, and that's also on my Android phone. So the yellow and the blue are the same physical device, but it's two different apps doing the speed testing. And then in green, that one line item, or actually sorry, two line item, is the Chester Cheetah gateway. So that's a 5G gateway that I have a T-Mobile SIM card into. And then the Arcadian one, that is the T-Mobile KVD21 gateway, and that again has a T-Mobile SIM card in it. I didn't mention it, but the Android and the signal stream, those are both Verizon, and then the Cheetah and Arcadian are T-Mobile SIMs. Okay, the next one is if I have a booster or not, and if it's the high boost or if it's this Cel-Fi Go X booster. And then the other one is the distance, and so that one is basically the 5-foot distance is me standing right underneath the indoor antenna for both of these boosters. I had them both placed basically the same location, but I had one unplugged so that they were not interfering or competing at all. And then the 40-foot distance means I was testing in the back bedroom corner, which is 40 feet away from that indoor antenna. And then you can see obviously these different values there. I'll break it down so it's a little bit easier to digest, hopefully. And this is basically the download speeds from slowest to fastest. And you can see obviously if I'm in that back bedroom corner, which I'm calling it 40 feet, I could call it back bedroom in the basement, but it's quicker and shorter to say 40 feet. And so I get no signal with my cell phone. It doesn't work. You know, you can't run any test. Now if I have the high boost on with the Arcadian, it was only giving me 2 megabits per second down. For whatever reason, it has given me faster in the past. But again, with the high boost in my cell phone, testing it, I was only getting about 2 down as well when I was far away from it. But if I go keep going to the right, you can see I start testing some other devices, and you can see at the far ends of it, the fastest one actually was with the high boost and me being close to it with my Android, my Verizon Android on a speedtest.net app. The second fastest was the Cel-Fi Go X, same location, same phone, same speedtest.net app, but it was only 42. So, you know, that one I was a little bit surprised, but the high boost did actually perform better than the Cel-Fi when I was right underneath the booster. Okay, for the upload though, now this is another story. Again, the first few you can see are without a booster or with the high boost. Those did not do well when I was 40 feet away. It basically did not work. So the first 4, basically no signal. Then it's interesting to note that the Cheetah, actually with no booster, was able to eke out a couple megabits per second of speed. And then this Cel-Fi Go X, back in that back bedroom, if I use the speedtest.net app, it only get 2 megabits per second upload. But if I use the Signal Stream app, you get 6.8. So that's the same location, same device, same booster, but two different apps are giving me two different answers. So that's always kind of the trick with some of this stuff, is I try to test at least two different ways just so I can get a full story. And then you can see as we keep going over to the right, the fastest for upload by far is the Cel-Fi Go X. Whether it's with the Android phone or the Cheetah Chester device, it gives you the best performance there. Alright, ping, that's another very important thing for pleasability, as far as how well does your device actually load new web pages, if you're doing any kind of teleconferencing, video conferencing, chat, that kind of stuff. The ping is really going to matter. Gaming, of course, that's another big one where ping really matters. And so if we look here for this one, we want lower. Lower is better, higher is worse. So all the stuff on the left is the best, other than the 0, which there's no ping because it didn't get signal without a booster. But then if we look there at the lowest ones, you know, they are dominated by the Cel-Fi Go X for the beginning ones, and then once you hit the high boost, other than being super close to it with the Arcadian, all the high boost ones are significantly higher than the Cel-Fi Go X booster. So this tells me that the Cel-Fi performs well there. Now if I go to a full summary that I showed at the very beginning of the video, this is how I kind of broke it down overall, big picture, to try to understand the big difference. And the key thing here is the only time the high boost performed better was specifically with download performance, when I was right next to it. Every other situation for the high boost versus the Cel-Fi Go X, or no booster for that matter, the Cel-Fi Go X performed the best. Best download, best upload, best ping, and it had by far the best coverage. So this Cel-Fi Go X certainly is able to cover, I didn't even mention this, but that's with one indoor antenna. The kit came with capability to have 2 indoor antennas, and I literally only put one in to see how it did, because I wanted to compare it kind of closer to apples compared to the high boost with just one indoor antenna. But clearly here, if I were to put my 2 indoor antennas, you know, kind of split on each side of the house instead of just having one single one in the middle, that 40-foot performance would go away, because I would cut it down to like 20 feet or less by having 2 antennas hooked up. So I am actually very sure that anyone with a house of any normal size would get full coverage with this Cel-Fi Go X. Now there is a little bit of an asterisk to that, and that is the gain, or the amount of coverage that you get with a booster, with any booster. It is tied to how strong your signal is outside. Alright, so just to touch on the T-Mobile stock gateway, so this is the Arcadian KV21. When I had no booster hooked up down here in the basement, this is the signal metrics I was getting for it. And basically the thing I'm looking at here is the RSRP of -109 and the signal to noise ratio of -1. So very poor signal to noise ratio, and it gave me very slow performance, or almost no performance down here with this setup. There was no 5G detected, that was just LTE. But now I plugged in the Cel-Fi Go X. I had it set up for T-Mobile to boost, and then right away I got a much stronger signal. This is like 5 feet below the indoor repeater, so that RSRP really improved to -60, and then my signal to noise was much better as well at 11.5. So, you know, I would certainly say double digits signal to noise is where I'm typically happy. I think above 20 is where you really want to be. I typically never get that here at my house with my setup. So certainly way better than -1 though. But what's interesting about this is that not only did it vastly improve my LTE, but I actually hop on 5G signal down here with the N71, and the RSRP really isn't horrendous. I mean, it's poor, it's low, but I don't fully understand what's going on. I think the gateway is doing some thinking there, and now that the LTE signal is so much stronger, it's able to latch on to this N71 5G, and it has poor signal to noise as well. So it's not a great signal by any means, but it's just interesting to note that the gateway does get 5G when the booster is on. But as I said earlier, this does not actually support T-Mobile 5G boosting itself, so it's not able to boost the 5G signal, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't actually help you get onto 5G, which is interesting to know. So I'm sure you still have lots of questions, and you might have to rewatch a couple things to try to gather all the information that I try to throw out here. But if you have any other comments or questions about this, feel free to put them down below. If there's something else maybe you're thinking that you want me to test with this, do ask me, and I'll see if I can figure out a way to work that into the schedule. So thanks for watching. Take care.